Hey guys, hopefully you can hear me okay. If so, please leave a message in the comments that you can hear me okay. We are getting ready to get started here in about a minute. Let me know where you guys are coming from. Excited to hear from you and where you are going. Yes, Les, I am here. I was just trying to figure out a way to also go to Instagram at the same time. But yes, I am here behind the scenes with my friend Mario. So hope everybody is having an awesome day. I will be with you in just about a moment. Hey guys, leave a message in the comments. Let me know where you are coming from so I can highlight them on the screen. We want to know where people are coming from. We want to know where this message is getting out to. Hello, everybody. Woo, woo, woo. It's a good day so far. I'm excited to do another live stream. So woke up super early this morning, started day one of marathon training for the Cleveland Marathon. So I've been up early, got my presentation done, did a little rehearsal. So I am ready to share some information with you guys. So let's see who is here so far. Who do we have? We have our friend, I know you in real life. That's why it's so hard for me to say your name. But on YouTube, LALCARAZ is joining us, and he already has a question, which is awesome. So the question is, are you going to talk about macro lenses or tube extensions on existing lenses? And what about the probe lens? Yep, we are going to cover all of those things. John Marr says hello. Hello, John Marr. How have you been? Hope you are doing awesome today. Nick Corey says, good morning, TJ. Hope you are doing well. I am ready to roll. I'm ready to rock and roll. I love these live streams. I love doing them every day at noon. I wish this was something I could do every day. I mean, I will say this takes a ton of preparation and a team behind me. So I want to call out everybody this morning for going over the presentation and just double checking some things for me. Eeyore for putting together an awesome blog post that's over on our website, thepixelconnection.com. Again, this is a whole team efforts coming at you, so a lot of preparation goes into this. Les, there you are. Welcome, welcome. Amy Mann says, thumbs up, thumbs up. I'm hoping that you could hear audio, so yes. Nick Corey just got audio. Yeah, so I was muted there kind of in the beginning as we get started, as I was doing some final preparations. But I'm glad everybody is here joining us so far. So let's get started with our topic today, macro in your PJs. Or as it was actually kind of funny, Jackie, our Fuji rep, said, I would rather you call PJs comfortable work attire. Some of us regular home office workers don't know what you're referring to. So this is also macro in your comfortable work attire, not to confuse anybody who works from home already. So looks like we have somebody joining us from Milford, Connecticut. Hello from Milford, Connecticut. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it. So let's go ahead and get kicked off. A few housekeeping notes. So my friend Eeyore will be monitoring the chat, as will I. So if you have any questions, any more specific things, please let us know. We are here to help. And I say this every day in our live stream. This live stream is kind of a way for us to reach out to you guys over lunch and say, hey, what can we help with? We're here for you. So any questions that you have, just go ahead and put them in the chat. And I did want to shout out, when I said this was a team effort, Gage, who is our website ninja, got comments, embedded the comments on live.thepixelconnection.com. So now if that's how you've been joining us every day, you can put your questions in there as well. Again, we want to make sure that we're meeting your needs. We are still open at the store. So from 1 to 5 every day but Sunday, we are at the store for curbside pickup. So just pull up, honk your horn, flash your lights, give the store a call, whatever it takes, smoke signals. We tend to keep an eye on it, and we can bring your product out to you. All you have to do is pop your trunk, and we put it in there for you. You drive away, everybody's happy. So if you need anything during this time, so let's say we talk about macro stuff today, and you're like, you know what, I need to pick up that macro rail. Where am I going to get it? I know Amazon's, their shipping is not really working right now because they're focused on, the needs, those kind of larger needs as far as like antibacterializer and stuff like that. We can still get you those products. Any photography stuff that you need, we will be able to hook you up, and we just drop it right in your trunk for you. So we make it super easy. Let us know if there's a live stream that you want us to talk about. We want to make sure that we're meeting your needs, especially now that this is going to go on just a little bit longer. I have some awesome guests coming on, and I'll talk about those at the end of the presentation. But let us know if there's something you want us to cover. We will be sure to do that. And our goal is to do this every day at noon, and there might be some bonus content kind of thrown throughout at other times. So any questions, please let us know. Really quick, another thing that I start the PPA. So everybody that's joining me and has joined me in the past, I do apologize. This is a lot of I do this every day and talk about this. So I do apologize to you guys. But anybody new here, I did want to talk a little bit about the PPA. So PPA, which is the Professional Photographers of America, is an organization that I've been part of my entire career. I was on the board for the state organization, and the local one I was the president of. PPA means the world to me because it helped kind of jumpstart my career and get me several steps ahead. I mean, I'm learning from others who have gone through those same mistakes, but they are actually opening up for the next couple weeks all of their online content. So any videos, any tutorials, any trainings, you can actually go on to the PPA's website. I have the link. We're in this together, and they are opening that up to everybody, even if you're not a member. So I think that's a huge opportunity for you guys if you want to kind of brush up. Another thing, Adobe Live Summit starts today. So right after this stream, you can jump over to that stream. I think I'm pointing in the right direction. You could jump over to that stream, and it's basically the Adobe Summit was going to be an in-person thing, but they opened it up. So now it's going to be live streamed, and they're going to have some awesome speakers. I'm going to have that on listening to it as I plan for tomorrow's live stream for the rest of the day. So I wanted to call your attention to that because you can learn more. If you're in this mode of, hey, I want to learn more, I want to, maximize this time, this is a great opportunity for you. So speaking of today, what are our goals for today? Number one is pull you away from the fear, the uncertainty, and the doubt, the FUD as it's called. What's going on kind of around us? Is it important? Absolutely. Like, we all are in this together, and every day this is new things are developing. So I'm not saying it's not important, but what I think is important is that we are kind of pulling you away for that for just a little bit. Like, I just want your attention for a little bit to remind you that you have this awesome hobby. You have this hobby that will help you kind of get away from that. And I want to remind you that photography is a great way to get lost and your mind off of things. So that's kind of why we put these live streams together every day. It's not to sell you something. It's not to be a live auction where we're, getting rid of, we're selling gear at super low price. It's not advertising. I want to provide some content for you where I can kind of spark an interest and get you out of the fear, uncertainty, and the doubt. So another thing is I want to get you motivated to try something new. When you step outside of your comfort zone is where the magic really happens. So my goal is to get you outside of your comfort zone. If you're not used to shooting macro, you can learn from the things that I talk about today and maybe start something new, start something fresh, something that you have never done in the past. And guess what? That thing might actually become something that can be a profit center for you in the future, something that you can make money off of. Macro photography for stock imagery is great. For product photography is awesome. For fine art is awesome. So macro can open up the faucet of money if you put that time into it, if you hone your craft, if you put the business in place to do that. So maybe you can make some money. Maybe your portrait and wedding business is down right now. Maybe it's time to pick up, some macro photography so that way you can start doing some product stuff. Macro is something that is kind of universal in all different areas. Whether you're a wedding photographer, you need to get that zoomed in close up of the ring. Whether you're a food photographer, obviously, those closer photos of that food. All aspects of photography and videography actually touch back to macro. As always, all these resources are free to you. All you have to do is shoot me an email at social.thepixelconnection.com, and you'll have access to all of the resources that I talk about here. Also, this video will be saved and uploaded to our YouTube channel, and it'll live forever for, you know, as long as those services are up, so Facebook and YouTube. So if you need it, if you need to reference it afterwards, you can go ahead and click that as well. So what this presentation will not include, this is not like a deep dive. It's not like a one-day workshop where we have all these kind of sets set up that you can try all these things. This is really just for you to get started kind of in your living room right now. You know, what does infinity mean? You know, focus to infinity. What's close focus distance? It's giving you the information for you to be able to take this and run with it. So let's get started. What is macro photography? So macro photography is basically taking things that are meant to be, you know, really, really small and making them life size, making them larger than what they normally are. So if you took this picture with just like a 70 to 200, it's not going to be like full life size. But if you use a macro lens or some of the techniques we're going to talk about today, you'll be able to make that look life size or as it looks. Macro also gives you the ability to see unique perspectives, especially when we get to the probe lens. When we talk a little bit about that probe lens, you know, that's where it gives you this unique perspective that you've probably never seen before. And I think that's the power of macro, is that it shows the viewer something that they haven't seen in the past, and there's just a level of interest in that. So macro is really, really cool, and you can get some really, really cool photos. So let's talk about, like, what is a macro lens? So starting from the basic, we've probably heard of this term, this macro lens. Like, what makes it macro? Well, in general, most cameras or most lenses have some level of macro capability, but the focus lenses, the lenses that are made specifically for macro, they actually give you the ability to get that one-to-one magnification or more. So it lets you get that kind of 1-to-1 ratio where it looks more life size. And there's, no matter the camera brand out there, there are macro lenses available, both native as well as third-party lenses that are available. And we're going to talk about a couple of our favorites later on in the presentation. Every camera, like I said, has several different macro lenses, and they go from different focal ranges. They have autofocus, some of them don't. So my goal is to kind of talk about these different focal ranges and then talk about some of the first-party and third-party lenses that are available. So what focal length should I look for? So I'm standing in the store at Pixel Connection, and I see all these macro lenses. What focal length should I look for? I mean, that's your biggest difference. I mean, if they're all out on the counter, you're going to see that they're all various focal lengths, if you will. So I want to talk a little bit about minimum focus distance, because this plays a pretty big part into your lens selection. So let's say we have our camera. So we're looking at this top image here, this top diagram. So number one is our kind of our focal distance, our minimum focal distance. And you'll notice it's not at the end of the lens, it's actually right there where that line is. And what that line is that's where your sensor, your focal plane, is actually at. So if you look on the top of your camera, I don't know if I don't have one like in reach, but on your on the top of your camera, you'll probably see this little like circle with a line. That is where your focal plane actually is. So that's where, you know, distance wise, that's where your sensor actually lives. So when we talk about minimum focus distance, that is what it's referencing to. So it's not till the end, it's not right till like the end of the lens itself. So the working distance is what the number 2 is. So this is how close your lens can get to. So this is the working distance of how close you can get. So you can see this top one, that's a 30mm lens. So what that means is, you know, it's a 30mm macro lens, and it means you can be that close to your subject. Now, if you look on the bottom, we have the 100mm f2.8 macro. So we can still get super close photos of it, but we're doing it from further back. But look at that minimum focus distance and our working distance. It's now extended much, much further. So we're not going to be right on top of that flower, that subject, whatever it is, with those kind of longer lenses. So the 35 to 70 range. So what is that range really for? So these lenses are great for kind of general purpose. They're an all-purpose type of macro lens. Most people, the stuff that they're trying to create is going to fall within that lens, so, or within that focal distance. And what's great about this is it's wide enough that you can see some of the surroundings, if you will, like what's going on around the center of that flower. It's not super telephoto. So this is going to be kind of your more general lens when it, and a lot of starter, people start kind of in this focal length in order to get started with macro. So moving on from there, we have that kind of 90 to 120 range. These lenses to be are a little bit more popular when you need to shoot things like bugs and things that you need to keep a distance from. So these are going to be things that you don't want to get super close. So I talked about in other live streams. Sorry, I'm trying to fix an audio issue. But I talked in other live streams about the Elmer Fudd, where you're kind of sneaking up on things and where you're trying to when you're trying to get close to things. That's where these longer focal ranges or focal lengths are going to really come into play. You see we've listed a couple here. The Sony 90mm macro, when I shot Sony, I use that one quite a bit. Canon has two. All manufacturers kind of have some that fall within this range. And I do want to point out that I am talking about full frame equivalent. So when I'm talking about the 90 to 120, I'm talking in the full frame range. So, this might differ if you do have micro four thirds or a crop sensor. Those numbers are going to change a little bit. So any questions so far on the two that I have covered? I want to say thank you for bringing up. It looks like there might be a little bit of a chop in the audio. So I'm going to make some changes here while I wait for a couple questions just on the Wi-Fi. I want to make sure that my computer has priority right now. So what questions do you guys have on macro? What things are you wondering about macro? I want to know in the comments on either Facebook or YouTube. So moving right along. So the 150, so this is going to be kind of a very long focal range, and this is going to be something that is a little more like you have intent, like you are trying to achieve a certain look or a certain like photo, like this one, for example. You can see that we're pretty far away from this butterfly, but that 150 makes us feel like we are a lot closer. So the 150 plus, those are going to be the ones that are going to be super telephoto. You're going to be really far away with those. That's going to be a little bit difficult for things like focus and that fine tuning of autofocus. But I can tell you, if you want to get this type, like this is from the Sigma 150, if you want to be far away, like butterflies are really hard to photograph up close, especially in the wild. So that's where you're going to need a lens like that. I did also want to talk a little bit about image stabilization. Sorry, I had to grab a drink there. If you are not shooting with a mirrorless camera, so a lot of mirrorless cameras, they have the in-body image stabilization. That means that sensor is compensating for your movements. And then if the lens has stabilization, for example, with Panasonic, they work together to make sure that circle of light is hitting that sensor. So if you're not using a mirrorless camera that allows this sensor to be stabilized, then it's really important for you to have the image stabilization on the lens. So that way that circle of light can hit that sensor properly. And it's kind of, any movements or any jarring things that happen, this will allow you to keep those super tack sharp images, even with a little bit of movement. So if you can find any macro lenses that have the stabilization, that's definitely going to help you out. So moving on from there, let's talk about, like, let's say I want more. Let's say I want to get a little bit more creative. Are there other lens options out there? And there absolutely are. We like the 65 mil from Canon. It's a 1 to 5 times macro, which means you can make things 5 times larger than life. I mean, it's getting there super close. So it is fully manual, but that's fine. Like, we're going to be locking this down to a tripod, to a focusing rail, and we're going to get really close. So the 65 is a really cool lens, and it's kind of a tried and true lens to Canon shooters out there. Another one is Laowa. So Laowa that's the Laowa. That's something that's a brand that's a little bit newer to the marketplace and newer within like the last 5 years. But they're making some quality optics and really unique optics. So We're going to go through a couple of our favorites, but check this one out. This is the Probe lens, and you can see from the title there, from their website, is the weirdest and most genius macro lens ever. So you're probably wondering, like what would I use that for? Like, it's like a telescope on the end of my camera. So what I did was I grabbed, actually, there was a really cool video on YouTube, and if you haven't looked it up yet, definitely take a look at this lens because it is super, super cool. So this video here is showing all the different things that they'd use to kind of test. And I want to take a moment here and kind of let some of this video play because it kind of shows some of those things with macro and giving us those unique perspectives. So I'm going to go ahead and make that full screen so you guys can see it there. Good. And like this is a pair of jeans, some 501s. I think that's Levi. But look at how cool that is. I mean, we can see all these like layers. I mean, it has a light at the end, so you can actually see when you go into those places, like that lamp. It gives you such a unique perspective. And there's one coming up where it's like a book. Yeah, this is probably one of my favorites as far as the notebook because they time it like just right with a pen. So watch. Woo! And he's doing this at his kitchen table. Like, he's creating these really, really cool things that we have never really been able to see before, or getting super, super close. And it just provides such a unique view, like some yummy, yummy pizza. And there's one where he actually goes and like puts it into a vacuum cleaner hose. And I mean, you see like all the dirt on the inside. So, you know, this is that super, here it is. Here's that old vacuum. So you can see here as he gets in closer, the light on the end will actually illuminate all around. So we can see inside of, you know, this guy's vacuum. And so gross. So that's, it's a cool lens. Like, it's a very cool lens, but I wanted to use this video to also illustrate, you know, with photo and video, how you can give people a unique perspective. So these are a few of our favorite lenses. So the Laowa 15mm, this is a 1:1 macro, and this is the only super wide, essentially. This is the only super wide that's out there that gives you 1:1. So look how close you can get to that B. And it looks like he's like, hey, who you looking at? You know, it gives us a really cool perspective, and it allows us to get in close, but still it's a wide angle. So we're able to see the scene kind of around that B. And again, the scene helps tell the story. If this was just a B on a black background, that's not going to tell as good of a story. Like, this is more in a natural habitat. And what's really cool about this lens is you can actually use it for macro or regular landscape work as well. I mean, it's a 15mm, so it's already pretty wide. So here's some example images that we have. These were actually shot in store by Eeyore. So you can see the one on the left, you know, that's in super close, and we get that macro look. And then the one on the right is a little bit more wide angle. It's backed up a little bit. And now we have a sense of presence of this image. So we can see, even though it's blurry in the background, the governor is speaking. This is, you know, a thing of film in our store. You know, we can see the exit sign right over the store. So I now have a sense of place for that. So that's what's really cool about the 15mm from Laowa. Now, another one is the 25mm. And again, we're not really going up a ton with these lenses. They're just different. So when I say one lens is really good, it's for a specific purpose. So when we're looking at these lenses, like this one, for example, this is 25mm. So this is the focal length, which is important, but then we can look at the actual magnification and get an idea for the type of images we're going to create. So for example, this is a 2.5 times to a 5 times. So this is going to be in super close, and it's going to make it, you know, it's going to make it look really big. So we can see this. I mean, this looks like what would be probably a fly of sorts, and we can get in so close and see, you know, I think those are the eyes on his, I don't really know fly anatomy, if you will, but you know, those little red dots that we wouldn't be able to see to the human eye. And you can see here, this lens focuses at 1.6 inches away. So it's going to be able to get super close and make things really big. Here's a couple more example images. These were shot in the, actually in the store, and you can see here, this is actually a Matchbox car. So we know how small Matchbox cars are. This is the actual grill of the Matchbox car and the tire as well. So this is in super close, and it's focusing at 1.6 inches away. So now the 60 millimeter. So now we're backing up a little bit. Remember, we see that millimeter change a little bit. So what it's going to do, that means we're further away for this shot. So this is a 2x or an ultra macro lens. And it's also the first 2:1 lens. So 2x the magnification that also allows you to focus to infinity. So you could use it for portraits or landscapes or all these different, you're able to focus it to infinity, so that way you can get everything from that kind of hyperfocal point all the way back. A lot of things are going to be in focus with this lens because we can achieve affinity focus with it. What's nice about this too is sometimes like bugs are going to come forward and back, and this lens, because it has such a large, you're able to kind of move things as far as having that infinity. You're able to capture things, as they're coming in and out of the frame. So like ants, for example, as they're coming into the frame, you would be able to capture those. Here's a few more examples, and I wanted to put 3 of these examples up here. Let me make it a little bit bigger for you, so that way you can see the difference, like the utility of this lens. So the first one is that 1:2 magnification. The next one is the 1:1. And then the next one is the 2:1. So you can see we're a little bit more, with the 2x the 2x macro, we're able to see a lot of the things around it. But if we get in close, we can focus all the way up to that tire on that Matchbox or Hot Wheels, whatever that might have been. So what if I don't want to buy new lenses? Like, hey, TJ, like times are tough. Like I'm at home, I haven't been working. What are some other options? Like I still want to do macro photography, but I don't necessarily want to buy a new lens. That's totally fine. Like there are much cheaper alternatives to get you started. So the first thing you can do is get what's called a reverse ring or reverse mount for your lens. And basically what happens is you have the regular lock that goes into your lens, and then you have a thread on the other side, so you can actually screw your lens in backwards in order to use it kind of the opposite way of the way it was meant to be. And this will actually allow you to achieve macro focus with the lenses that you already have. So if you already have, several lenses, you just have to find a lens that has the right ring size for a filter ring, and you'll be able to screw it on. And we can help you with adapter rings and things like that. But to get started, it's easier if you already have a lens that's similar to kind of what the adapter has. And we have all these, for most brands, we have in store. So if this is something you want to play with or you're wondering about, you can actually head over to our website and type in reverse ring, and it'll pop up, or just give us a call, shoot us a message, whatever's easiest for you. Now, macro extension tubes, on the other hand, this is you keeping your lens in the same way. So this would be like you locking your lens into your camera. But what we're doing is we're giving a little bit of space to that sensor with these extension tubes. So we're putting basically like a spacer in there in order to get the lens further away from our sensor, which means we're going to be able to, it's just a little bit easier to focus on some of those macro things with this methodology. And these are relatively inexpensive. I actually have a pack for Micro Four Thirds from when I worked at Panasonic that I bought with my own money, and those are the ones that I use for some of the macro work because they are relatively inexpensive. Even though we had, there were several macro lenses out there, these allowed me to use lenses that people already had and use them for macro work. And what's cool about these lenses are these extension tubes is they usually come in like a package with different millimeters. So like I said, 2 or 3 come into a package, and this allows you to not be super close if you don't have to be. It gives you a little bit of fine tuning, if you will, on the subjects that you're shooting. So one thing we have to remember is the minimum focus distance. So what we're doing basically is you can see here kind of that number 5 and where that lens would attach. We're basically moving that out so that way we can achieve the focus that we need and have a little bit more distance there. That's all these extension tubes are doing. Now, some extension tubes are autofocus, but some are also manual. You're just going to have to kind of fine tune it, which if you're on a mirrorless camera, you can turn on focus peaking and it'll kind of turn red or blue or whatever color you've set it when you actually lock in focus. So macro, it's never been easier to do macro, in my opinion, especially if you have a mirrorless camera. So now there are some downsides to macro extension tubes. The first being you do lose a little bit of light. And as you put more things on there, you're going to lose more light, because we're taking what this lens was supposed to do, and it would achieve a certain amount of light when it hit that sensor, and we're moving it away from that sensor. So of course we're going to lose light. It's not able to, it's not going to travel as far. We're messing with those optics. So you're going to have to bump up your ISO. So it's not with, this is something that we talked about back with, with birding, with getting your shutter speed up. Don't be afraid of popping that ISO up. And let's say that, you get so far and it starts to get grainy. Well, then that means you have to add a little bit of light to the scene. So just take these things into consideration as you are using these tools, and you'll be able to overcome them. You'll be able to create some awesome images like this one here. This is on the right, is we used with an extension tube, and in my opinion, it's hard for me to tell the difference between something where it was a super expensive macro lens and an extension tube unless you pull it apart. For most of the stuff that we're going to be shooting, the extension tubes are going to do really well for you. Another thing with macro extension tubes, you can't focus to infinity. Again, by putting that spacer in there, we're kind of messing up the optics and what they were intended to do. And then if you put too many on there, your focus point, where the focus is going to be, the focusing distance is actually going to be inside the lens. So it's just not going to focus. So don't get 10 extension tubes on there, or you're not going to get a photo, and you're going to lose a ton of light. It's going to be garbage anyway. So just start off with 2 or 3, 1, 2, or 3 of them when you're first getting started, and kind of see what the results are, and kind of slowly work your way up and add more. So you could see some examples here. So the first one that we have, this is just the 85 1.4 art. So this is just what a normal photo would look like. We're going to put the 12mm tube on there, and you can see we're already getting super close. So I'll make these full screen for you guys. So you can see that we're getting a lot closer here. We're starting to see some detail that it was kind of hard to see here. So now we're going to add the 20mm. So the 20mm, you can see from here to here, we're getting even more close, but we're still keeping the detail. We're still keeping the image still looks crisp and clear as the first one did. And then finally here, we have all 3 tubes on there. And what we're doing is we're bumping up that ISO. We're making changes with the camera settings to keep them exposed the same way. And we also are using light for this. So there is a light set up to illuminate this scene. So this is what you can expect from here to here with the set of 3 extension tubes. And I do believe these were the ProMaster extension tubes that we did for this. Eeyore did these photos, so thank you, Eeyore, for those photos. So is there anything else I need? So let's say you already have your macro lens, or you already have extension tubes. What are some tools that I can use to just get a little bit better? So this is a macro rail. So this is something that makes your life exponentially easier as a macro photographer, because what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to make precise adjustments without having to move your tripod over, closer, further back away. It's giving you the travel to get in about another 6 inches, I believe it is. This is the ProMaster one. Gets you about 6 inches closer, or further back. So this is going to allow you to make those kind of fine-tuned adjustments and not have to move your tripod. So I did want to call out, looks like we had someone from the store put something in. Normal close focus range on the 85 art is around 33 inches. With all 3 tubes, it was about a foot. So again, it's allowing us to get in closer, it allows us to maintain or get that focus that we weren't able to do with that lens. And what's nice is, let's say you're a wedding photographer and you shoot with that lens, just grab the extension tubes. They don't take up a ton of room in your bag. And when you're ready to do your ring shots, pop them in there, throw a little light on there, boom, you're good to go. Super, super easy. Bonus points if you use the macro rail to get that fine tuning, because something like this is just going to save you time. At the end of the day, it's going to save you time. It's going to be more precise, and it's going to save you, some headaches and frustration. So macro rails are super helpful. Another thing is let me go full screen so you can see these. Macro lights. So some of the macro lights, like the one on the right, are it's like a flash. So actually these are both flashes, but I put them on here to illustrate a point. Actually, the one on the left is not a flash. So the one on the right is a flash. So it's going to, pop light in there. when you press your shutter button, just like it's a remote flash, just like you would put, any flash on a stand. It's doing a similar thing. It's remotely triggered to pop light in there with a flash. Now the other one is it's a ring light. So it screws in, and it's an LED light that is, it lights your subject like closer to your, what you're photographing. So for example, let's say you are photographing like a bug on a plant. It's going to provide constant light way in close. And what's nice about this one, this actually gives you the ability to fine tune like how much light goes in there. So then another thing I wanted to point out, let me go back to my screen here. So some lenses, like this is from Canon in their M line, this is their macro lens, and it actually has that light in there. So you can see there's actually a light on the end. So another thing that like it was hidden behind here. Like when I got this lens, I actually like had to read like, why wasn't the light in my box? It's actually hidden behind there. So there's a couple lenses that do that as well, that have the light built in to illuminate your subject. So these are useful tools, especially if you don't already have lighting. These are great tools to kind of get you started, and they are less expensive. So it looks like we have another question that had popped in here. Let me grab it real quick. Does in-camera focus stacking substitute for a macro rail, or does focus breathing then come into play? And it looks like we already have an answer. Jim Summers, it can vary with the lens, but also a lot of cameras do pretty well with it. So leave this question up there. Does focus stacking substitute for a macro rail? And I don't think so, because the macro rail is going to physically get you exactly where you want to be. And then I would do that focus stacking to get all those different things in focus. So for me, one is a tool to get you the image. The other, like focus stacking, for example, is going to be the artistic look that you're going. So one's a physical, gets you right where you want to be, you're locked in, and then the focus stacking can help you get, all the things, or choose the things that you want in focus. So hopefully our two answers answer that question for you, Jim. And thanks again for joining. You're here almost every day. I love it. It's like having groupies. So any questions on macro lights, please put them in the comments and we'll get those answered for you. So the next thing, this is a pretty cool table actually that I'll talk about in a minute, but constant lights. So constant lights make macro super, super easy. And again, we have like this whole display in store that you can come and see these and try them, and all different power and prices. But just a little bit of light, even from your phone, anything that you can do to illuminate that subject will make your life easier. So again, let's say you're using the focus, the macro extension tubes, you're going to have to pop a little bit of light in there, because you are going to have that light loss. That's where constant lights come into play in order to kind of illuminate them. And also you might be, let's say you're shooting outside, with birds, not macro birds, with bugs or flowers, you might see a flower, but it's on the wrong side and it's being heavily backlit by the sun. You're going to need to add light in there, so that way, it illuminates the scent, the actual scene itself. Otherwise, it would be in shadow. So what's really cool about constant lights is they also provide a ton of light output, especially when they're used in a controlled indoor situation. So the thing on the right is a product table. This is an LED light table. So it's illuminated, up from the bottom, but then also we have these little arms that come up, and you can shift these. They're what's called a gooseneck. So you can put them in any shape. You can move them and put them exactly where you want them. They're actually, the gooseneck, and I guess what I'm referring to, it's very similar to something like this, where you can actually put that light kind of wherever you want. This, you're able to use those arms that you see on the display or on the presentation there to be able to put light exactly where you want. So that's something from Savage that's pretty cool. That again can give you a ton of light, or more professional looking light, especially if you're doing photography or you're doing product photography. This is going to give you very, very high quality light. And again, these things are not very expensive at all. So moving on. So what about actually like shutter button, pressing that shutter button? That's going to introduce shake. So one thing that we recommend is using something like a wireless shutter release. So this is one of our favorites. This is the I don't know if it's pronounced Aeon or Ion, but this is the one that I use. I know Zach at the store uses. This is something that a lot of us have in our bags. But what it does is it reduces camera shake. When you use your wireless shutter release, it reduces the amount of camera shake that is in your image. Again, we're trying to get rid of all that because we want super, super sharp images. Using something like a shutter release is going to help you do that. Also, if your camera is a more modern camera and it has Wi-Fi built in, you can use the app that comes with it for free. You don't have to buy anything, which is awesome. So light boxes. So light boxes are exactly what they sound like. They are boxes that have that you're able to put a lot of light into, whether you're shooting through the sides or some of them actually have lights built into them. And this allows you to kind of clear out the background. So now these are also super useful for, so let's say we were going to take this photo here of this plant for a website. It makes it easy to extract the plant from the background. So if we want to do a background replace or we need to use that flower, you know, for something else, you know, we might be doing some advertising of all these different fake flowers that we have. You know, we might be having to cut those out, and doing something like a light box gives you equal light all the way around. So it makes it super easy to just extract that image. A lot of times you can just open it up in Photoshop, use the magic wand tool, it'll select it and you can just pull it right out of that background. So these little light boxes, and like this one that we carry, is so small that it can just go right in your bag. So if you are going on site in order to, you know, do some product photography, this is nice because it pops right in your bag. Got a little tip here. In a pinch, you can always set the timer on your camera so you can hit the shutter and take your hands off. Yes, I did not get to that point. Using your camera's self-timer can work, but sometimes it could lead to missed opportunities with live animals. So if you are doing, thank you, Jim, very good point. I'm glad you brought me back to that. If you are doing more still life things that aren't moving, you can absolutely use that, the shutter timer, or the shutter timer on your camera itself. So light boxes, super easy to get crisp, clear photos that are very well lit. So I want to share a little bit more. These are the resources. So I'm going to go through these next couple slides as you guys are coming up with your questions for us. So a little bit more content, but this is a kind of a question break. So please let me know your questions. I want to be able to make sure that if you do have specific questions about macro, myself or the team will be able to answer those for you. So I did share a couple more resources on learning macro. So this is going to be kind of, if you want to take this a step further, I provided you with 5 links in order to get you started. And also, if you need some inspiration, I went to Instagram and pulled up a couple. So here we have Don Komarechka. I don't know if it's going to show there. Don Komarechka, he's this last one here. One of my favorites, does a ton with snowflakes. He's on some of my favorite photo podcasts. That's how I followed him for the last couple years. So if you are looking for some inspiration, here's some great macro inspiration from Instagram. So moving on from there, what questions do we have? Any questions out there? For lighting, also use the 12-inch reflectors. Good idea. You know, if you do only have window light, you know, you're able to pop that light in there. Or if you're out, you know, shooting flowers, you can use that small 12-inch reflector in order to pop a little bit of light back in there. Great tip, Les. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Any other questions? All right, so I want to let you guys know we are doing one-to-one or one-on-one classes. So let's say you're like, hey, I've had this camera for a while. I haven't had the time to figure it all out. We are offering virtual one-on-one. So you basically jump into, you hit a website and we sit down and talk through. We have the camera and we explain things for you. And these can be on almost any topic. What we do is we actually pair the perfect person with you. So let's say you want to talk about live streaming. You could still book through this link, but it'll be you and I. We'll sit down, we'll talk about live streaming, or if it's macro, or if it's just general knowledge, you know, we'll be able to help you out and have a more one-on-one feature or one-on-one class with you. We do these in store all the time, but we brought them into virtual with everything going on. So what else is going on this week? Super excited about next week. Some of my friends, the rest of this week and next week, a few of my friends are stopping by the live stream to talk to you guys. So Tomorrow, we have Ruben coming in from Westcott. And what he's going to talk about is setting up a portrait studio basically in your living room. So not during Corona, like it's not for you to invite people over and violate the stay-at-home order, but what the purpose is to show you that you don't need a large space or a studio in order to set up a portrait location. And what's really cool about this is I think he's using constant light. So all of these things will go into kind of how to light your live stream. So if you're wanting to do some live streaming, tune in tomorrow. Ruben is super knowledgeable. We've been like testing in the background and making sure everything's up and going. He's been putting a lot of time in this for you guys. So please, please, please join us tomorrow with Ruben. Thursday, Bob from Tamron. So if you've been to our store before, you know Bob. He's a really, really knowledgeable, more than just a tech rep. He's, does portraits all the time. So he's going to be talking to you a little bit about, I believe, portraits. He's going between two different topics, but I think he's leaning a little bit more towards portraits right now. On Friday, I do the Friday Focus, and the Friday Focus is probably my favorite live stream that I do. It's like a news show. We talk about kind of what happened in the industry this week, what's going on. I share some useful articles, things like that. So the Friday Focus is probably one of my favorites. It's not necessarily, learning how to do a skill. It's more staying in tune with what goes on in the, the photographic industry. I'm a huge news hound, so I love sharing that with you guys. Monday, we're going to have Brian Manier. He is a landscape artist from landscape and graphic artist, graphic designer from Michigan. And he's also he's on the X Ambassador team. So he knows his stuff about Fuji. Just overall, he's probably the most creative person that I know. Not in just photography. He just did a video for Fuji that was super, super touching with his son. He just did a vlog for Fuji. He's just a super, super creative dude. And we're just going to hang out and talk. We're going to talk about what's going on, the X-T4. We're just going to have kind of a fireside chat. It's not like you're going to learn something. It's more of an inspirational type of talk. On Tuesday, we're going to have William Innocent. He's one of the Panasonic ambassadors, also a really good friend of mine. He's going to be talking, I believe, about wedding photography. And then on Wednesday, we have a mystery guest who is a close friend of mine. He's done speaking for us in the past. If you stopped by our imaging booth, you saw him setting up V-flats. That's a huge tip, but we're finalizing some stuff on what we want to do. But Wednesday, we will have a mystery guest. Woo! So practice makes perfect, guys. At the end of the day, you have to get hands-on. You have to start. You have to try. There's no amount of training that you can do that will just make it do it for you. You have to take the initiative and try these things, and just try them with what you already have. You don't have to necessarily go out and buy a bunch of stuff. Just start with what you have, or if you do have to buy something, start off small and work your way into it. I am someone who is an impulse buyer. So if it were me, I would be buying all those, and I had an infinite amount of money, I'd be buying all those lenses. And over the last couple of years, I've kind of pulled myself back and set goals for myself. Once I do this, then I will do this. And I urge you to do the same thing. Like once I get 5 great macro images, then I'll maybe get the extension tubes. And once I get, 10 great images with the extension tubes, maybe I'll start looking at a lens. You don't have to just go out and start buying everything. Number 2 is we did do a whole blog post on this over on our website. And if you go to pixelconnection.com/blog, you will be, you'll see everything that we talked about here with links to any of the products that we mentioned. So hopefully that's helpful for you as well. Thank you guys so much for joining. We are at 12:45, boom, on the dot, right where I wanted to be. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Pixel Connection on the, on our YouTube channel. You can message us directly, give us a phone call, whatever you need. We are here to help you guys, and I will see you all tomorrow. I hope you guys are staying healthy and having a good time. We'll see you.